good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
Welcome to Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider the news of the day. Let's begin with Datuk Sri Najib Razak's first day on the witness stand at the High Court today over alleged corruption and power abuse in the SRC International trial. Now, this marks the first time that a former Premier has taken a stand in the court of law. Of course, this is the first time a former Malaysian Prime Minister has testified as a witness in a criminal trial involving himself. Because he's chosen to do this, Najib will now be subjected to a cross-examination from prosecutors and, not to mention, public scrutiny. What do you make of this?
Well, because, you know, he did have the option to remain silent, but that would have perhaps counted against him. This is probably the best way for him to defend his position. But it does remind me, Melisa, of very important examples we see around the democratic world where former leaders are taken to task for their time in positions of power for abuse and so on. We have had examples from South Korea, Brazil, in fact, many democratic nations. And I think the important thing is to note that in some undemocratic nations, when people fall from power, it's often a power grab, and the question of them being put on trial might be more about politics than it is about justice.
Well, okay, but for cases like perhaps receiving illegal donations, South Korea, the first female Prime Minister comes to mind. She's also the first former Prime Minister of the Republic of Korea to serve prison time. In Brazil, President Lula, I think, was also sentenced 12 years in prison, jailed in April of last year for charges of money laundering and passive corruption. But I think coming back to the Najib trial, there will be no shortage of drama to keep trial watchers riveted. I think today on the stand, Najib forgot to bring his IC with him to the witness stand.
And you know, Melisa, that's very interesting because it elicited a response from his lawyer who said that I'm sure we can all appreciate that people of this stature don't always have these things on their mind. And he then goes on to quote an instance where President Barack Obama of the United States forgot to bring his credit card to purchase flowers for his wife. Now, we know, of course, in the instance of Najib Razak, he might not be in the dock today if he forgot to bring those credit cards when his wife wanted to purchase, flowers and more.
Okay, so he clearly forgot to, he remembered the credit cards but forgot the IC. What do you think the lawyer meant by saying people of this stature and then comparing Najib Razak to Obama?
Well, and this comes back to the aura around the Razak family. I think now, firmly dispelled in the minds of some Malaysians, though there's a lot of hand-kissing, I think, when you watch the videos of his arrival at trial and so on and so forth. I mean, clearly loyalists will continue to be loyalists. The other thing, of course, is this idea that somehow people of stature don't play by the same rules that the rest of us have to play by. And this is probably the reason for the downfall of Najib Razak, this insulation from the normal conduct that is expected of human beings, or citizens, respecting the law and such, right? To think that you're somehow extraordinary, this is what that lawyer's comment really is about. He's trying to promote this idea that somehow Najib is special.
Yes.
And being in the dock proves that he isn't special.
And you might not have to bring your IC with you if you are of that stature. All right, Najib's defense trial will continue tomorrow and also for the next 2 weeks, so we're going to be keeping a very close eye on that. But let's now turn our attention to the Malaysia Tattoo Expo 2019 controversy. You have had to be living under a rock if you've missed this story. The latest turn of events. Blackout Trading, which is the organizer of the event, they have apologized over the semi-nude incident during a competition, which, of course, has gone viral on social media.
Yeah, but listen, one of the things, because, I mean, when you look at the apology, it seems like this is a typical case of a Malaysian resolution, right? So even if you are really not in the wrong, you apologize because the people who are in authority get to set the script. And this is the unfortunate thing. It's another instance where many of the elements, I think, in the controversy speak to the ways in which we've been doing things for many years, including the way in which government presumes to have the right right to define what is Malaysian culture.
Right.
The charge of obscenity is used against norms of other people. For instance, people for whom dressing much more modesty is, I think, not the issue. Really, it's about dressing in ways that other people might find immodest become problematic.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of want to talk about the conversations, Sharaad, surrounding this, because on what basis the event was attacked and on what basis the event was defended on particularly social media. The conversations have been fascinating, and I just want to know. I mean, do you think that the outrage really stemmed from the fact that it was a tattoo expo, or the fact that there was, a lot of skin on show?
Well, it's very hard to tell what the detractors, feel, and they could be motivated by all kinds of things, including trolls who perhaps want to distract us from the main event of Malaysia, which is the Najib trial, right? So there
also
can
the
always
Zaid Hamidi trial.
The Zaid Hamidi trial, or many of the trials of those former leaders are now kind of cast away from politics or power at the center. I think what's important to recognize is or to focus on is actually the response of the government in power today.
Yes.
Now, when you listen to the statements that they make, then I think you have real cause for concern. Because it seems to me that the current government does not know how to defend diversity.
Okay, if I may.
Many of its leaders are tone deaf.
If I may, Tourism Minister Muhammadin Katapi, who is the MP for Silam in Sabah, has said, I understand it was done behind closed doors, but this contravenes etiquette. Hosting international events is good for the tourism industry, but not this way. It does not reflect the true image of Malaysia, which is mannerly and decent. Mannerly and decent. Is that the true image of Malaysia?
Well, I mean, it's a question of how you define these things. Again, it comes back to the idea that government somehow has the right to define this, and it has the right to impose its values or its thinking on the rest of society. I mean, I think there's a recalibration, or there's a promise of a recalibration between society and state in the new Malaysia. And that's what we're hoping for. We're hoping for a less government intervention and actually the kind of arrogance behind some of the expressions used by government ministers in this case.
I have to say, Sharaad, I really wonder what we can learn from this controversy and look at the fallout that what has happened from this. I mean, in the response of the government, I'm just wondering, imagine if you are East Malaysian and this is, the government of the day, the federal government of the day, I guess just deepening that divide, deepening that resentment against West Malaysians.
Well, there's that. There's also the question of many West Malaysians who do, in fact, enjoy tattooing as a lifestyle choice, nothing to do with culture, really. But again, they will be alienated because this is a government that's not going to defend their right to their choices that have no impact on the lives of other people. So if you didn't like tattooing, if you don't want to, nobody's forcing you to go to a tattooing event. This was actually one of those ticketed events. So you couldn't have just strolled in. You would have had to pay the money to go in and then be outraged. The question is, why can't this government defend diversity and freedom of choice?
Fundamental liberties. All right, we'll come back and take a closer look at the postponed IPCMC bill. Stay tuned to consider this. Don't go anywhere.